Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello, good afternoon and welcome back to the channel where you join me on a truly lovely February afternoon with both of the cars today to drive them back to back. Now this is something that I think you probably expected was going to come on the channel. These are two unbelievable cars that serve very similar purposes, but I promise you they do it in completely different ways. So today I'm going to first jump into the Senna, take it for a drive, then swap around, go out for a lap in the GT, just to talk a bit more about this, about some of the similarities, some of the differences, and you might be surprised by which of these is actually the more usable car on the road. So let's first take a quick walk around, then it's time to drive to see how the Senna and the Ford GT stack up. Firstly, I am incredibly lucky to be able to be sharing these two cars with you guys. I can't believe they've both arrived. You might have seen the video that we've also shot talking about how I've added these to the garage, where it's come from, and a bit more about the financing and Shmee 150 finance powered by Harrington Finance. But these two cars are about the most brutal, uncompromising cars that I think you can currently get that can wear number plates, that are road legal cars, homologated normal cars. The Ford GT, of course, being the literal homologation of Ford's GT LM race car, the Senna being something that looks a bit like a race car, but up to this point hasn't yet become one. At the moment, just the road car until the Senna GTR gets delivered. There are 500 McLaren Sennas in total, not all of them have been delivered yet, and there are going to be just over 1,000 or so Ford GTs, again, not all delivered yet. Only a handful of these coming to the UK. It's a complete unicorn of a car. A fair few more Sennas. There's a big kind of skew towards UK delivered McLaren Sennas, but basically they are both ridiculously aggressive. The aerodynamics are crazy, incredibly fast, and at the moment still being a bit run in. If you've been keeping track with my channel's videos, the GT now is about 450 miles or so, coming up towards 500 I think by the end of today, and the Senna has gone to about 225. Yes, I know these are small numbers, it takes time, but today the weather is lovely. It's a gorgeous afternoon, so we're going to drive both of the cars to do a bit of a comparison between them. So let's talk technically for a moment, because both of these have some trick functionality. The GT has its track mode where you spin the toggle, confirm it, and it just drops down to the floor. The Senna has its hydraulic suspension that takes longer, but it can also be put into race mode where it will again drop down to the floor. But one of the biggest differences is that the Senna has this ginormous picnic table at the back, which of course you might have seen has even been a McDonald's picnic table at one point on the channel already. But basically that's a permanent rear wing. This car at the moment has its slightly smaller rear wing raised. Normally this would be a large wing, but it would sit flush with the bodywork and give you this unbelievable view around the teardrop cabin. So both of these cars are based on their carbon fibre tubs, and with aero very much playing a part. Back here in the GT, you've got a 3.5 litre twin turbocharged EcoBoost V6, making 656 horsepower. The Senna is 800 horsepower from a 4 litre twin turbo V8. 800 horsepower, well, almost 150 odd more than the GT. Both of these cars weigh next to nothing. The Senna is under 1,200 kilos, 1198. The GT just over 1,300 kilos, so a little bit heavier. I think the Senna is in hypercar territory. This is McLaren's Ultimate Series. The GT is the very top end of supercar, or maybe baby hypercar, but it has so much presence. Just look at the design of the GT. This is what I like so much about it, is how it's clearly inspired from the GT40 back in the 60s, and then the 2005 GT that came out at Ford's 100th anniversary. You can see that in the styling, having the dual stripe up the centre, but the headlight shape, the general front end, the huge vents that you find either side of the stripe. And in fact, remember, this car launched as a 50th anniversary race car to go back to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and again, race in the event, and in this case, win it. So this is a road version of a winning race car, which is always something really cool. The Senna, as you can see, is uncompromising to McLaren's finest ever extent. There's active aerodynamic flaps here inside the front end. There is airflow going all the way through this thing like you wouldn't believe. Gurney flaps everywhere. The GT has gurney flaps also on the rear wing. We've got a roof scoop up here as well. even these gurney flaps at the back, which basically deflect air up so that the air from the engine, the hot air, can be sucked out as quickly as possible. Everything, again, done for aerodynamic efficiency and performance, even down to the exhaust. Look at that, the way it pushes air up so it doesn't impact the diffuser or anything that's going on back there. Now, in terms of my two specific cars, they're both really quite custom. This is, as you know, MSO cerulean blue with the optional MSO tinted blue carbon fibre, a bit like McLaren's Pacific theme, but kind of made myself with the blue centre locks as well. And the Ford GT is their liquid red, a deep metallic pearlescent red with the optional Alan Mann Racing Gold stripes from the extended palette, custom made for this car to pay tribute to the Alan Mann racing cars from back in the 60s. So two very bespoke configurations, highly unique specs. In fact, I don't think there's another one that matches either of these anywhere out there, just made unique in this case. So, to help me drive, we need to find somebody to pilot the other car. And just like that, we are joined by Sam. How's it going?
Very good today.
So, some of you might have seen Sam's channel. We've actually known each other a very, very long time, coming up for 2 decades. Which is
a long time. I'm getting older.
Yeah, definitely. Sam's more than capable behind the wheel, driven many cars, and one of the few people that I'll trust behind the wheels of both of these. Sorry to Ben and Joe out there, no, their time will come. Joe and Ben, if you're watching, your time will come to drive these. So, shall we, I don't even know, no, you've got the Ford GT car.
I've got the Ford GT key.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much dictating which way we begin. You begin with the GT, I'm going to begin with the Senna, and then we'll go for a little bit of drive, and I'm quite looking forward to this as well. You're going to go in front just because I want to see the GT out in front of me on the road. Right, let's do it then.
Let's go.
Fortunately, we have just enough room for both of the doors of the cars to open, but if I slide in here, let's get Sam to start up. Let's hear it. It's quite quiet in the GT. This, however, is ridiculously rumbly and grumbly. You've got a grab handle to pull down the door, and it latches and then soft close. You've got these insane bucket seats with the wings around the top that weigh nothing, the carbon fibre buckets. Lots of information going on the central screen, the track telemetry, a lift system that takes a while to raise. Basically, not that much in the way of practicality. I'll talk more about that when we get home. For the moment, if Sam is ready, got the thumbs up as well, we will head on out. I'm going to let him go in front actually. We'll get a good view of the GT driving on the road with its wing up at the moment, and get a small feel for the comparison between these two, driving on the same roads. So the first sensation in the Senna is that it vibrates a lot, it rattles a lot, you hear all the stones, it's very noisy, and it's not that comfortable. The suspension is incredibly stiff. Now, this is the slight surprise between these two cars, because the GT is the actual race car. I mean, don't get me wrong, this thing is about as close to a race car as most people would normally ever consider thinking or going with a car. He says, oh, I've managed to turn on the limiter. Whoops, the speed limiter, like cruise control. It does have some road functionality features, but away we go. Like I said, you can hear all of those stones basically bouncing through the bodywork. And this bit of the road, I love this test route because you've got a mixture of different bits of road. This bit is really bumpy, so with the car in its current settings, you can properly feel all of that as it kind of bounces around on the tarmac. If you get in the tram lines, it drags you from side to side. It's got quite thin front tyres relative to the car, but very, very wide rear ones. But just driving along normally in automatic, it's quite usable in the sense of it drives like a McLaren. If you're familiar with driving a McLaren, it's not that alien and crazy. The GT up ahead is so wide on the road. If I press active dynamics, dodging the bumps just there, we go manual on the gearbox. We're in sport mode for both the chassis and the powertrain. But every vibration is coming through the car, everything. So in terms of drive, this thing is, I mean, you hear all of those stones. This thing is as raw as a car I have ever driven on the road, purely in terms of the sensations, the event, the drama, the experience of it, because you just get everything being fed back to you. The seats to the chassis, to the carbon tub, to the road, to the field, to the tyres on the tarmac, the Trofeo R tyres made for this car. It's all shaking right through you. So we pull out onto the road here, wait for that car to come through, and off we go. The turning circle is better than the 675 LT was, which is a nice surprise. And then that noise! Obviously I can't go crazy with the revs, but you can hear the whistling wind noise coming in through the roof scoop above you, sorry. Downshift noises are so cool. The lift-off noise. I'm a long way from fully knowing how this car works. It's got a small, tight steering wheel, no buttons or cluster on the steering wheel, which is a big difference as well between the two cars. Normal indicators, normal lights, normal wiper controls. Just sheer drama that shivers all the way through. You can feel it down to your spine, honestly, as we come to a stop. Obviously some pretty good brakes as well. Need to be as safe as we can and careful with these two cars out. Very, very sensitive pedal feel. Steering that's, as you can imagine, tight ratio. Wow, small little pops there. It makes big pops and bangs when you get up through the gears when it's more warmed up, and obviously when it's running a little bit more as well. I'm loving looking at the shape of the GT. It's a freaking spaceship, that thing. Looking through the buttresses, looking all the way around the cabin, the teardrop cabin of it. And this is a car with 800 horsepower, 800 newton meters of torque, 800 kilos of downforce. It is an out-and-out track car, maximum performance possible. And I've driven it around Estoril, not my car, but one of McLaren's press cars at Estoril, and had the most unreal experience in terms of how easy it was to feel driving it so fast, but how unintimidating it was as well. Of course, it's made as a road car because we, as consumers, are drawn towards cars that we can use in a normal road driving environment, as opposed to just out and about on the racetrack. That kind of changes the whole feel and sensation of a car if the only place you can use it is on a scheduled booked day out on a racetrack. Listen to those noises, that's literally the carbon fibre top. Now what it doesn't have is particularly useful sun visors. They're kind of there. I guess they're better than the GT's ones, if we're thinking about it that way. But it's basically the rawest of the raw, no compromise. That's the way McLaren basically made it. They made it as a car that is a road car, but in their words, it isn't sanitised to actually be used as a road car. It isn't a car that you should really be doing this with, although it's quite an experience when you do. In terms of the interior, you've got all the usual electronics, the navigation, digital radio, reversing camera that comes up on the big screen in front of you. Nice features that just make it a little bit more akin to a road car. But then in the mirrors, you have this silly grey wing. In fact, it's so silly that you kind of look underneath it in the door mirrors on both sides, and then you've got those gaping vents underneath, the largest vents, I think, of any car ever, in terms of the cooling for the engine back there. The rear visibility, pretty shoddy because you're basically looking down towards the ground behind you. Great visibility of the engine though. Great view back there into the engine bay. But not the best view in the world in terms of what's actually happening behind you. So we open up a touch. You have to hold on. You honestly have to hold on. You have to be aware of getting temperature into the tyres, of course, to AORs. Oh, rigid. Very, very bumpy. You can flick it up into track mode where you go from having ignition cut to having inertia push, and also, as you just saw, the dashboard folds down to give you this minimised view, unobstructed view over the front scuttle. Wow, it's a very different shift feel because the car propels itself and makes sure it gives you a push up into the next gear rather than how you normally get that crack from the exhaust note. This is ridiculous. We're driving the Senna and the GT together. Major pinch moment between these two cars. Wow, just wow. Now we've got a very tight corner here, so this is going to be interesting to get around. This is actually the first time I've ever driven it in track mode, so it is firmed up. The hydraulic suspension stiffens things up, and then you've got those glass doors so you can see the windows straight through them. You can see the curves. Wow. I feel like if you really put your foot down, you have to hold on so tight. I'm also very aware of the value of this car, and I mean, this is an interesting thing. These cars in different regions actually cost quite different price tags. In the US, a spec GT is about $500,000 and a Senna is about $1 million, so double the price. In the UK, the GT spec is about 550 and the Senna spec is about £800. So they're actually quite different ratios between them, which differences. So, Senna is crazy raw, yet it's not the race car, and it feels a bit more, big bump there, feels a bit more sensible, shall we say, out on the road. But let's head back and have a go with the GT. And off then. Wow, it gets quieter. It rattles and vibrates so much. I've never experienced a car that does it quite like that. And then to open the doors, the button is up here on the roof, and then you give it a push with your elbow, which is just kind of cool. And then you hear the stones bouncing out. So that's the Senna. Let's head out and catch up with Sam. It's going to be time then for the key swap. So I need to give you one Senna key.
Thank you very much.
I'll take one GT key, and I've left you the Senna with the lift system up, by the way.
Oh yeah, that'll be like 5 minutes to get it down.
Which is quite funny. It does take a while to lower the lift system. That's one of the things about the hydraulic suspension setup. But when it's up, despite how long the front is, you don't really hit it on anything.
No, it's like a 4x4 with it up. It's insanely high.
It works really well. It lifts the whole car, the rear as well, whereas the GTs is like pressing a button and up it goes and then back down again. Not going to drive with the track mode in this out on the road because, again, you have to be stopped and drop it back down. But we'll do the little swap around now then, get comfortable in the GT to talk a bit more about some of the differences. And by the way, Sam is also making some videos of his first drive in the cars.
Yeah, just my first initial impressions.
I've been lucky enough to drive both of these before taking delivery of them, so I've driven the GT and the Senna and had that first impression here, but I'll be interested to watch your thoughts as well afterwards.
Yeah, we'll see.
For now though, I'm going to take a seat in here and get ready to rock and roll with the GT. From one then to the other. Now there are a lot of differences between these two cars. Of course, I am now sat left-hand drive rather than right-hand drive, which is rather backwards. Let's fire it into life, much quieter. This car is so much quieter inside than the Senna, and there are a few kind of striking differences. So we're going to experience while we're driving, but it's basically more compliant, more usable, more dailyable, yet it's so impractical, as you can tell, because we've got the luggage for the day sitting in the passenger seat, because there is nowhere else to put anything in here. There's a tiny little boot behind. The Senna has a bit more space behind the seats than this. We've got a lift system that you literally press a button, up it goes, press it again, down it goes. It's literally that easy. If you do want to put it into track mode, let's put it back down, nice and easy. You go track, click, and the whole car drops just like that. You want to go back into sport, one toggle again, and up it pops. That sounds cool when the Senna started up. It's really cool. It's a deep grumble, so much louder than this. Again though, still being run in, but nearly run in, 470 miles now on the clock. You've got a circular toggle in here, 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, they both have that. But basically, I think ready to go into drive. If we go into normal at first, because of the bumpy road, and press the comfort button. So in this you press C for comfort. That'll be the best way to begin. So, as soon as Sam is ready, we can head on out. I'll give a thumbs up in the background. I'm ready when he's ready, and let's take this out and see what it's going to be like, starting off in automatic. And at the moment, we're just waiting for the Senna lift system to go up. Compulsory, has to be done. We're on a bumpy off-road bit, it takes 15 seconds or so, but you get a great view of the carbon fibre. Both of these cars are almost entirely carbon fibre, from the interior to the body panels to the tub to all the components to make them as light as possible. Of course, this is a touch heavier, it's not quite the same price tag as the Senna, so they haven't taken as many opportunities to lighten it down. It's also a ginormous car with a tiny cabin. If you think about this, if there was a passenger in here, we would basically have our shoulders touching. There's no spare space anywhere. Oh, that's cool. And the wing as well, the wing is doing some bobbing. It recalibrates every time you start moving in the Senna. So it adjusts as it heads on out. Wow. Wow. I'm actually loving looking at the Senna from behind. That thing is madness. What a car. Right, so out on the roads we go. I'm gonna just head on out so that I get behind him, drop the suspension, and away we go. So this is the bumpy stretch of the road again then. Obviously got to recalibrate for being in a left-hand drive car. But this is where the chassis of the car gets tested. But where it's the surprise package. It's much more comfortable, it's much more compliant. It rides over these ruts, rivets and bumps without being thrown around anywhere nearly as much as the Senna does. And this is the car that's the race car. Everything is very, very sensitive. I mean, the Senna is sensitive, but the steering in here is twitchier. The throttle and brake pedal feel is even twitchier as well. And that means you do have to be driving the car, yet, like I said, it's the more compliant, dailyable car of these two. So it really makes a fascinating comparison for me that they are so different in driving experience. So let's pop it, avoid the bumps, up into sport mode here. Takes it out of comfort. You can't have comfort in sport. Press M to go manual, a bit like going active dynamics panel, but with slightly fewer settings in this car. Drop the gears, where you can start to get a little bit of the noise, but this car doesn't really come to life unless you are on it. You have to be really going quite hard, quite flat out, to properly get a feel for it. When it starts to wake up, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so you get that almost burbling, raucous noise going on, the warbling. It's quite a strange sound that the car actually makes. And then you get the lift-off swooshes as well out of the turbos. It's a very different sound, a very different feel, and this is what is just boggling me. On paper, they're so similar. Why have both of these cars? But in driving experience terms, they are oh so different. So different. Of course, I love this car. I love this car's story. I love what it came from. I love the fact that Ford and the team designed it, developed it, and showed it in basically a completed form without anybody knowing it was coming. It was a complete secret, developed over a long period for the third Ford GT and the second generation of new GT, and again this tribute to the older GT40. But the steering feel, when you do turn it in more, the car is so flat and so alive. This is unreal. Following the Senna, look at that thing's wing. Look at that wing. Actually, I don't want to be too close because I know what stones that rear set of tyres is going to throw up. Whoa, off it goes. Over a bump. Even in sport mode, it's not too uncomfortable. Even when you've got it turned up to sport mode, it still rides fairly decently. There's an odd peculiarity about this car, which is that the speedo really overreads. It's about 10% over what you're actually going, which is, I mean, it has to legally overread, not underread, but it's still a bit peculiar to be so much over. But this car is the one that you're more comfortable in. The seats are more Grand Tour-esque, as opposed to shoved in a very tight, snug bucket. The whole car in general, the suspension riding over the bumps is just more comfortable to be in. Yet it has less luggage space, and it only comes to life when you drive it really hard, and it makes you want to drive it hard. The Senna, you feel okay driving at normal speeds. The GT feels like it always wants to be going absolutely flat out. If you're not going flat out, the car is itching and egging you on to do more with it. As we go tight round the roundabout again. But the steering feel in here is bonkers. It's so good. It's so rewarding. This is the peculiar car. This is the Marmite car. This is the one that you have to get used to. And you know, another one of these differences is right back towards this blinding sunshine right now. Yeah, this rear view, this sun visor, sorry, is horrendous. The steering wheel has a million different buttons. It's chunky, it's big, you've got the LED rev lights up at the top. You've got all the different controls and toggles all on the steering wheel. Because basically in this car, the sync navigation system, the window and mirror switches, those are just Ford part-bin items. But the steering elements, the dynamic elements are Ford GT. Those are exclusive and special just for the Ford GT, and that's what you feel when you're driving it. I don't even know how I would begin to pick between these two. Of course, I'm a big fan of the story and the connection, and I think there's a stronger story to the GT, even though that car is named after one of the greatest Formula One drivers ever, Ayrton Senna, to celebrate his 3 Formula One World Championship wins for McLaren. That's the reason for the naming of the car. That car is faster in a straight line and on a track, no question. This car, though, feels a bit more usable and a bit more spaceship-esque, even though we're looking at that wing, just because you go to a petrol station, people don't know what it is. You have this conversation, you know, what car is that? It's a Ford. They look at you and say, there's no way that's a Ford. And then they go around and look at the badge on the front, and yeah, guess what? It's a Ford. It's a Ford that can drive like this, that can really make a move on and do it in style. The looks of this car, and I think it's one of the prettiest cars out there on the road. So they really are different. They really are. And this is the first time I've driven them back to back on the same roads. The biggest thing that's confusing me is in mentality terms. I feel like this is more of the latch on it. It's more a case of you just kind of squeeze the pedal, and it's like pressing on your arm or something. So, oh wow. Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. Yeah. How do you decide? How do you decide? And I can put the wing up and down in here, by the way. Little menu in the infotainment screen in front of me, the dashboard screen. Pop the wing straight down, or if you have it automatically, it goes up. I don't know what the exact speed is, but it goes up depending on your different driving modes at different speeds. Then you can pop that up and down quite easily. I think up is more poser-esque, but down is cleaner. I think it's a cleaner appearance. Dashboard changes when you go through different driving modes. In fact, they both do that. So, Ford GT and McLaren Senna, but now just some small accelerations with them. You feel like you have to grab this more. That's why it's more of a hardcore dynamic car. You feel like you have to really, grapple with it and grab a hold of the steering wheel to get it to do what you want. I think it's going to take a track comparison to really be able to tell you much about the differences, because they're both ridiculous on the road. Neither of these makes any sense at all. That's what I'm basically concluding here. So, got to put the lift systems up. Oh, we've got a car coming out. In this car, up you go, nice and easy. Fold the visor, and well, jobs are good. And in we go back to the car park to reflect a little bit more. I want to show you some things on the interior as well that's different between these two cars, because there's quite a bit. And carefully does it. Of course, the Senna has the lift system up. It's a hard thing to remember in that car. Drop this one back down. There we go. All you got to do in here is back to park, stop, handbrake. You can automatically hear that applying. And that's it. That's the GT parked up. I'm going to show you a bit more around the insides of these two. We've driven both then.
We have.
What do you think?
Oh, very different.
They are surprisingly different.
Surprisingly different.
I've just been talking for the last couple of minutes about how these are two cars that do the same thing. They're both really hardcore road cars.
Yeah, but one's way more hardcore than the other.
In some ways, not in every way.
Maybe.
I think we're probably both going to agree that the Senna is so much more firmer, noisier vibrations. The GT, given it's actually a race car, is the surprising one, because it's kind of more sensible.
It is more sensible. It rides like super well, just like firm, but not like, you don't go over a bump and it doesn't do that.
And so when I'm driving at road speed, I would say the Senna feels quite sensible, quite fun.
Yes,
the GT needs to be driven hard.
I get that feeling.
It's what I felt the first time I drove it, and it's again now driving it in the countryside. I feel like for the GT, if you dial it up, it's going to come to life.
Yeah, I think so. I think I've just driven them both for like 5 minutes pretty much.
Pretty equal, yeah.
Pretty equal, sort of 40 to 60 miles an hour, that sort of speed. And the GT feels like, you've got to like, it kind of wants to go. Yeah. It needs to go before it starts to fizz. Whereas the Senna is like the whole time. It's just like on it.
Drama and experience. So if I was giving you one key to borrow for a month or something, which key do you take? Senna key, straight off?
I mean, I'm not
quick on that one.
I prefer the looks of this car.
Yeah, but to drive,
but that is more like
drama, more of an occasion.
Yeah, but we now need to drive them a bit quicker.
Yeah, a bit quicker when they're running, and then out on a racetrack. So when they're running, we'll do the exact same thing again and come back to you with more. For the minute though, guys, after this, now I'm going to take you on a quick tour around the interiors of these two cars. Parked like this then, with the sun starting to set, the doors on the two cars are actually quite similar in the way they open upwards and outwards. The Senna has its signature door glass window, which on my car are tinted black, piano black, so you can't really see too much through them. But both doors have a lot of aero work at play. You can see straight through here those kind of turning vanes to direct the airflow around the side of the car. On the GT, you've got quite a large opening that would be right down there behind the front wheel well, but in both cases about aerodynamics and about airflow to keep the car planted, so squeezing through that narrow gap there. Let's take a quick look at the interior. Excuse all of the luggage that we've got going on in here, but a carbon fibre tub clothed in Alcantara. The base of the seat is fixed in this car. You can't move the base of the seat at all. You can tilt the backrest from Sparco forwards or back with a lever down here, and you can also adjust the pedal box to move that forwards and backwards using the strap there. And the steering column has the most amazing amount of adjustment that you can actually do. You can push it right back or have it kind of all the way out. It's got two different levers to move it. I've never seen a steering column move more in a car than this. But the GT is so low that headroom is a factor. If you're 6 foot or taller, taller, you'll have to be quite slouched and you're not going to fit in with a helmet. So that is something that you have to consider about this car. But basically, a lot of people have kind of almost complained about the interior of the GT, but when you see it in person, it is so purposeful. There's no redundant usage of anything. You know, all of the dead space is removed. For example, when you look at that strut bar across the dashboard, or even here, just the carbon fiber, it's basically minimalistic and purposeful. And the steering wheel, like I mentioned, lots and lots of buttons. You'll toggle here for the track mode, sport mode, normal, wet, or VMAX mode, which would let you go high speed, keeping the wing down, so it wouldn't go up, which would would increase the drag. Put it back into sport for the moment. Cruise control, your various different toggles on the slightly squared off chunky steering wheel. Just a strange feel to the shift paddles on the back, and your drive selector and start button down there in the middle. But the sync system, for example, highly developed. You have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Basically, a very functional interior, but still with some comfort. The seats aren't uncomfortable at all. Practicality is there, the software is there in the system, and it does quite a lot as well. Now, if we move from the GT over to the Senna, this is, well, immediately look at it. Again, carbon fiber tub, slightly different layout and style. Now, this is based, it's mono cage 2, based on the mono cell from the 720S, so it's a bit wider. There's not that much space down in the footwells. In fact, there's not much space down in the footwells of either car, but you do have a bit more room around here. Certainly a lot more headroom, but some space behind the seats, some space back there where you can fit a helmet, for example, on each side. The sound system as well is integrated back here, but basically the seat is a literal carbon bucket. The steering wheel is the polar opposite. This very thin gripped steering wheel, Alcantara and leather, some MSO options that I've got on the car, but no controls on there. Those are all saved to that central infotainment, which has track telemetry. It tells you your pressure on the pedals. The car has built-in cameras. So for example, up there, also at the rear and on the front of the car, the track telemetry cameras, which will all save to a memory stick that you have in the car to save that information. Then you've got the folding dashboard, which, as I've shown you earlier, if I just hit the button, I think, I don't have the key on me right now, Sam's still got that, but the dashboard folds out and you can show the full display or just have it in that tugged down display, which will again toggle depending on your different modes, depending how you've switched it, with the active dynamics panel in the center. And then just to be super cool, up on the roof are your buttons to start it, to put it in race mode. Takes about 20 seconds or so to pop it into race mode, but then it sits the car down about 35 millimeters or so and just stiffens up the suspension, basically makes it even more hardcore than it would otherwise be. And this thing, it's a pretty crazy machine. Oh, look at that carbon with the yellow of the sun, the evening sun now setting on it. It's a very hardcore machine. It's very, very crazy. As we've discussed, it is easily, I think, the firmest of the two cars. I'm just going to close down the doors for a moment and have a look around, because it's been quite interesting driving these one after the other. Oh, gotta give that a latch, have it pull itself in. They do a similar purpose. I've said this a few times, they really do, but they do it in such a different way that I hope this video has portrayed a little bit about that and a little bit of what those experiences are like. Look at that view, look at that view, look at that wing, look at the craziness. I think it's beauty and the beast when it comes to track focused super/hypercars for the road with the Ford GT and the McLaren Senna. And on that, I'm going to bring today's video to a close. It's been an awesome experience for me driving both of the cars. I'm looking forward to them being run in, getting to come out and do this again, to push them a little bit harder and to see what the GT is like when you open it up a little bit more. That's all going to happen in the quite near future, not too long to go. But for today, I hope this has given you a bit of a sense of what it's like, I guess kind of in my shoes, experiencing these two cars and how actually they compare and how they can be used for different things. But it's all just a teaser really, because these are track cars. So we'll take them out now, do some more driving, get some more miles on them, and hopefully we'll get near to that run-in completion when the opportunity will come around to actually push them harder. So thank you very much, as always, guys, for watching. Thank you for your support that makes all of this possible. But that is it for this time. I'll be sure to see you again very soon. Cheers.